All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So this is the final part of the economic systems in government. We're at communism now. Okay. Now, as I told you guys before, that the economic systems do tie into government. Because I know some of you guys have been asking, like, what does this have to do with government? What does money and things like that have to do with government? It actually really ties in together. Because based off the government, what kind of much control they have over things, they usually tend to go with that form of government. So countries that give a lot of freedoms, they tend to be capitalistic countries. You know, um, countries that are, kind of in between, total control and um, liberties, they tend to be a little bit more socialist. But countries that totally have a grasp on everything, those are communist countries, dictatorships, things like that, they tend to be um, communists, which we're going to be talking about today. And you're going to see for yourself what I mean. Okay. So, again, I want you to see that correlation between the two, between government and economics. So, the objective, analyze the meaning of communist. We're going to look at what it means actually. Examine the difference between capitalism, socialism, and communism. So we've already tackled two of the three, and now we're going to get to the last part. Create an argument on why communism may look good on paper, but not in reality. Okay, uh, I use the term, looks good on paper. I've been using it since I was in high school, and it still applies. It really does. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Here is your warm-up picture. So the first question asks you, what do you see? I believe I asked what three things you see. So there's quite a bit you can see on there. Um, but yeah, just write down three things you see. And then what do you think this artist is trying to say about communism? Okay, so take a couple minutes, write down your thoughts, pause the video right now because we're moving on to the notes in 3, 2, 1. All right, now the thing is, communism was actually created by two guys, but the guy who really gets the credit for communism is Karl Marx, which is, you see him right there. He was a German philosopher, a writer, a historian, and he's credited as being the father of communism. Now, he was a socialist, all right? He was a socialist who advocated violent revolution. He saw that, he figured, that protesting, kind of saying things, and yeah, it's all fun and games, but it's not going to do anything. It's really not. And his thing was, again, cause chaos, kick the industry in the teeth, let them know that you mean business. Um, that was his thing. He said capitalism would eventually collapse because capitalism is really about outdoing the other person. And he goes, when these guys are fighting, corporations are fighting and things like that, eventually there's going to be one, and then when that one takes over, they're going to raise the prices, they're going to make everything more expensive, and then the people are going to basically revolt, you know. And he says basically it's a dog eat dog. They're going to fight each other tooth and nail, businesses and things like that. So in 1848, he wrote a pamphlet called the Communist Manifesto, which is, there's a cover of one of the books. Right now, that guy Frederick Engels, he's the other writer. But again, Karl Marx gets a large part of the credit for being the father of communism. And then, excuse me, some years later, almost 20 years later, he writes Capital, which is that other book you see right there. And in his writings, he basically says that industrialized nations, France, England, United States, the population is divided into capitalist group, which are called bourgeoisie. And some of you guys may know that, you may hear that term, bougie. That's where it comes from. So he's saying that it's divided by the bourgeoisie, who owns the means of production. They own the industry, they own the factories, they're the upper class. And then the workers, the proletariat. The proletariat people, the hard worker people, the people who use their hands. They're working, hard for these people. He's saying that these guys are the guys who produce the goods. So there's the owners and here's the workers. He said that's how it is. The bourgeoisie, proletariats. That's how you're separated in class, by where you are in the workforce. Are you the owner and the pencil pushers, or are you the backbreaking worker? All right, now Marx again believed that because capitalism is a dog eat dog, which means that they're ferocious. I mean, they just go at each other. That it would eventually collapse. But what are some of the benefits that buyers, you, me, things like that, get when we are fighting each other for when they're fighting each other for our business? What benefits do we, the buyers, get? Now, I know this is kind of one of those questions that you might have trouble with, so I put it on here so you can kind of understand it a little bit more, try to explain it a little bit better. Uh, think of something like you like to buy. Like me, you guys know I love to buy my little Funko thingamajiggers, I love these things. Um, so, what is something you like to buy, right? Where do you go to go get it? Okay. And then ask yourself, why do you go there? Why to that store? Why that particular place? Now, I don't know if you're thinking about like food or clothing or whatever, but whatever it is, why do you go to that one particular store to get your stuff? Or why do you favor this other one over this other one over here? Why don't you go over this place? You know, whatever those factors are, write it down. So why do you buy your favorite thing? Why do you buy it predominantly in one area as opposed to another? Because I know some of you guys are like me. You may not shop just at one place. You might go several places, but the one you go to a lot to get your favorite thing, why do you go to that store as opposed to another store? Okay, so is it distance? Is it prices? You know, what is it? Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So why? Those are the type of things that um, benefits you. You know, when it comes to the capitalistic country or capitalist system. Think about that and put that as your answer. Okay. Now, like I said, I know this was kind of a hard question, but that's why I try to explain it here. Um, so again, what's your favorite thing to buy, and why do you buy it more? If you have several stores you buy stuff from, which one's the one you buy it from most, and why do you buy it there as opposed to this other place? Okay. So while you're answering that, be sure to pause the video because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, now Marx, again, like I told you, he was pretty much like a historian. He interpreted all of human history as a class struggle. Every time you looked in history, he said, you know what, that's what it is. It's workers versus the owners. Workers versus the owners. And then the owners, again, control the means of production. What's being created, how much, things like that, whether someone's going to get fired or not. Um, that's what they stick to. That's what he's saying. I noticed throughout history that's what it is. And so he said that as time passes, a smaller and smaller group of capitalists would then control all. So, like right now, you have a big group of millionaires and billionaires, and he's saying as time goes on, those groups are going to get smaller and smaller because they're fighting each other. Okay, and under a capitalist system, the strong survive. So under a pure capitalist system, the strong survive. So think of like fast food places, you know, McDonald's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, things like that. And as time goes on, he's saying that those places are going to get smaller. The amount of stores, you know, maybe not the amount, but the places. People are eventually going to be like, I don't like I don't like Burger King anymore. They slipped up. Their burgers not that great. Their fries suck. The price is too high. Whatever it may be, and eventually then there's gonna be less and less stores, and then eventually the small group of people are going to control everything to where it's a small group of really, 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 really rich people, and the whole rest of the country is going to be poor people who are begging for the scraps and whatever they can get from the rich. And he says it's from there that the workers, the poor people, will rise up and overthrow the capitalists. Because again, yeah, they may be really, really rich, but there's only a couple of them, several of them, where there's going to be millions and millions of really poor people. Okay. He also believed that, socialism, yeah, it's okay. But thing is, eventually, they'll become communism. Yeah, the government doesn't own everything, but as time goes on, they will. He said government planners decide how to produce, what to produce, and how to give it out, either selling it to the people, to other countries, things like that. And what kind of services are they going to provide? So again, if some type of business like a car washing business is not doing well, they'll be like, well, people like to wash their own car, so get rid of this car washing company. Okay. All right. So your next question is this: do you agree with Karl Marx that eventually socialist groups will become communism? Now, like I said, remember from earlier the class video, or if you were in class and you watched it, or you were there, about now socialism. But for those of you guys who were not in class, the video of socialism, we talked about that they don't control everything, but they do have a hand in a lot of things. And he's saying eventually they're going to control everything like communism. Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think that would happen? Why or why not? Eventually the government will say, you know what? We might as well control everything else, or the people might be like, yeah, you know what? They're doing a good job. Let them control everything else. These other factory owners, these other private industry owners, they're losing business. They're not. It doesn't look like they know what they're doing, so might as well give it to the government. Let the government handle it. All right. So answer that question. And then the second one is just hypothetically, let's say he's right that socialist groups become communist group. My question to you is this: do you think that the government takes over? That they're like, you know what, we might as well just take all over it. Forget what the people think, care what they say. Let's just take over. Or do you think that the people say, here, you run things better, so you control it. So you think the government takes the power, or you think they're given that power? So think about it, write it down. What do you believe? Knowing how people are from what you've seen, how society is, and things like that, do you think the government would take the power, or do you think the people would give it to them? Okay, so be sure to pause the video if you're writing, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So here's the thing. Under a communist rule, now we're getting to the specifics. They have a command economy in which every decision is made by the upper level of government, and then the orders are given down to the managers. Okay, if they say we want 1,000 cars created in 1 month, that manager's job is to make 1,000 cars in the month. Exactly 1,000. No less, no more. Okay? They said 1,000, so you get to 1,000 because that's what you were told. All right. Now in our country, you tend to want to make more because then that drops the prices, and then competition, your item's going to sell more because people are going to buy, these things, if they're cheaper, right? They're cheaper, that means that people will go more to that as opposed to someplace where it's higher in price. But under communist rule, no, we need 1,000. We have, or taking everything into consideration, how much resources we have, how much we need, things like that. So 1,000, that's the way it's going to be. Okay. Um, in a communist country, the government owns all the land. There is no private property. You can't own a house because, again, they own everything. They own all the natural resources. So if you were living in one place and all of a sudden you're digging in your backyard and all of a sudden there's oil in this country, if that's your house, you're rich. You are rich beyond belief. In their country, no, that land belongs to the government. You found it. Good job. Here's a pat on the back, maybe a gold sticker if you're lucky. And that's it. They get the oil. All right. Industry. You can't make your own business and say, "Oh, I want to start a paintball, place." You can't. The government may deem that unnecessary. No, we don't like that. Sorry, and shut you down. And there's no way to get around it. There's no way to say, "Oh, well, I'll just do it myself then." Can't. All right. Same thing with the banking. You try to get a loan from a place. If you go to one bank and they say no, you can't go to another place, another bank, and try to get try to persuade them or anything. No, because all banks are connected. All right. Transportation facilities, they own everything. All right. How much gas is being sold, where trains go at what time, um, the, ¿cómo se llama? Like planes and things like that. They are meticulous on that stuff. So if your leg is caught, when it's time to go, guess what? They're leaving. Okay. And again, they control mass communication. So television, they control what's being shown. Movies, same thing with that. Newspapers, they control what you're reading, what's in there. Same thing with radio, uh, social media. Even social media, they censor things. They control what's being sent to you. So if you try to find somebody, say you have a relative in the United States and you're living in, let's say, China, and they're posting something about, the United States being so great, la la la, here's democracy. They can't see that because their government censors all communications. So you have no idea how bad things are there or how good. And it's when we get reports on that kind of stuff, it's pretty rare, to actually really truly see how things are in a communist country. All right, so China, which is known as the People's Republic of China, that's their official name, they decide on everything when it comes to making a project. Uh, Everything from where this building or whatever is going to be, what type of material, and how much is like rent going to be for that place. So if they're building an apartment, how big it is, what kind of material, is it going to be cement, is it going to be steel, is it going to be wood, all that stuff is taken into consideration, and then how much are we going to charge these people? Okay. And the thing is, you have to remember, they control how much people get paid too. So, all right. All right, so here is your next question. Which part of communism do you think is the worst and why? Okay, so think about yourself, all right, and knowing how you are and things like that. What do you think is the worst? Like, you don't get to live well unless you have big connections. So those top people, unless you know them personally or you're related to them, chances are you're not going to be living well. You can't own land. You're assigned a job, unless you're like the best in a particular area. So if you're a scientist and you're the best, then you might get to choose that particular field, which you're good at. But if you're just an average Joe, who's like, I want to be an artist, I want to do something with music. Nope. You're going to be in construction. You're going to be a barber. You're going to be doing this. All right. So they don't really get to choose, really. And if you lose your job, they assign you another one, quick, fast, in a hurry, because you got to be doing something. There's no unemployment. Okay. The government controls forms of entertainment, so you don't really get to watch like, oh, I want to watch a comedy and this and that, and they don't really let you choose movies from around the world. It's just from there. Um, the government censors what you see and write on social media because sometimes people try to write things and it gets blocked. Yeah, because it's like, no, 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 you're saying things that goes against our country or what we believe. Nope. There's not much room for individualism. Like here, you can have your hair how you want, you can get piercings, you can, just be you. You know, over there, not too much. Okay. And basically, anything that the government deems illegal has to be smuggled, and the punishment for being caught with it is very severe. Very severe. Now, when I mean illegal, I don't mean just drugs, because that's what you guys tend to think when you hear the word illegal. Illegal, like in Russia, back when it was a communist country, one of the number one things that was smuggled through was not drugs. It was actually jeans. Blue jeans were one of the biggest things that was smuggled into Russia when they were a communist country, because blue jeans was a representation of freedom that we here in America have. And if you think I'm lying, look it up. They actually, well, it was like one of the top smuggled items into Russia when they were a communist country. Blue jeans. Okay, and then when communism fell, that's what they really wanted. People were bring on the blue jeans and McDonald's. We want that stuff. It was like the top two things that the people wanted: McDonald's and blue jeans, because they heard so much stuff about them. Okay, so pick which one do you think is like the worst for you, knowing how you are and the kind of person you are, and why is that the worst one? Okay. All right. Lastly, is your exit ticket. So again, choose one of these questions. What does communism mean? And write down two things they control. Okay. Second one, what is the difference between capitalism, socialism, and communism? Excuse me. If you can find like one thing that they all have different, that'd be awesome. But if you need to, like, well, this group and this group, they believe this, and this group and this group differ from this, that's fine too. Okay. That shows me that you understand what capitalism mean, what socialism mean, and communism, and how they're different from one another. And the last one is, why does communism look good on paper but not in real life? Okay, because again, remember about the evenness and things like that we talked about. But after you saw how things are really, why do you think it looks good on paper but not in real life? Okay, so think about all that bourgeois and all that stuff. Okay, so here's the thing. That's the end of this lesson. Hopefully you learned something new. Um, Next week, we will be having a test. We'll be starting a new part, but you're going to have a test there. And like I told you in class and on that video too, um, instead of having one big test, it's going to say part one and part two. Now, if you've been taking notes, um, you'll zip through this thing like nobody's business. All right, some of you guys may actually even be able to get both tests done in one day, you know. Uh, but if you don't, that's fine. Take the test one day, one part one day, take the other part another day. Okay. There's no time limit. There's no clock on there saying you have 5 minutes to answer this question. No, take your time, go through it. But again, like I warn you, be careful when you look online, because some of that information can be opinionated. Okay. And that could alter your grade, because again, if you put something that's someone's opinion and it's not really facts, like I told you guys, I read all your stuff, I'm gonna be like, no, no. Okay. And be careful when you spell. Make sure you spell the names and the things right. Okay. So again, you guys have a good day. You take care and be safe.